Well, good evening. Sunday evening. That week went really fast. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name's John Davidson and welcome to The Awesome Life of JD. Now, some people have asked me why I call this channel The Awesome Life of JD. And it was one of the things, people call me JD because my initials stand for John Davidson, and it just is a nickname that's sort of stuck over the years. But I also have seen that there are so many people on social media that are exaggerating what they do in life, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek of how people's lives are better than what they actually are. But mine, in reality, is pretty mundane. But I have done some pretty awesome things, and that's part of the whole journey that I'm taking you through. So. I did a car washing video a few weeks back, and some of the video was corrupted on there, and I mentioned that, hey, I like making videos, I like doing stuff because I'm lucky to be here. I was born 53 years ago in a crappy suburb of Sydney, and it was kind of okay then, but it wasn't the eastern suburbs, it was far out in the west. And Mum and Dad were really good people, and they worked hard. They worked harder than most people that I've ever known, but their education only limited them to a certain amount of prosperity in life. So Dad built this house in the credit squeeze of 63, and he started at the same day that John F. Kennedy was shot. He started digging the foundations, and my mum heard on the radio that JFK was shot on the 22nd of November 1963, and I was born a few years later after that house was finished. But I said just before, I'm lucky to be here. I was born in 1967. I weighed 4 pounds 5 ounces. That's not a lot. I've stayed in a humidity crib, which is one of those temperature controlled cots until I weighed 5 pounds, and that took about a month. So whenever people whinge about things in their lives, I always sort of keep on thinking mentally, hey, I am lucky to be here, and every day that you're breathing and upright is pretty much a good day. You can have some bad days, I get that. But that's sort of where I started out. We moved around a lot. Dad was a builder, a truck driver, among many other things. And he was also a bit of an idealist, and we moved from, he was born in Cowra, which is a small country town in the middle of New South Wales, kind of. It's about 3 or 4 hours from Sydney. And they moved to Sydney, and we moved all over the place in New South Wales. And then in about 1980, we moved to Queensland. And I have lived in most states or worked in most states of Australia other than Western Australia. Never been there. So I finished high school in Beaudesert State High. And if you have ever been to Beaudesert, you probably know that Beaudesert State High is a pretty tough school. You've probably heard of the Brisbane Broncos. We had several of the founding members of the Brisbane Broncos that were at my school at the time. And they were very, very good football players, legends, so to speak. At Beaudesert State High School, you learned how to fight fairly quickly, and I still have the broken nose to prove it. And that was done probably within about the last few weeks of grade 12. So that was really crazy. But it got me a lot of sympathy from girls, so that was really good. I should have figured that out earlier in life. But anyway, I studied at Beaudesert State High School a few things. I was pretty good at science. I won the award for science, but I never really liked it enough to get into it in the future. And when you're in grade 12, you never really know what you want to do you? So I got into university, went to university and studied commerce, marketing and personnel management, or HR as you would call it now. And I had it firmly in my mind that I wanted to be well, in grade 12, I wanted to be an architect, but I found out that you needed to be really good at maths for that. I was terrible at maths. We moved around so much that I think I must have missed somewhere where we learnt about certain things in maths. Algebra, quadratic equations, all that sine, cos and tan stuff. I had no concept about what that was about. But nevertheless, I was a pretty good reader. I used to read a lot. And I was a bit of a loner as a kid, so I used to go to the library and read a hell of a lot. So I was only really tiny, as you can see, and as you can imagine from being 4 pounds, a bit over 4 pounds at birth. So at Beaudesert State High School, I studied film and television. And back in 1984 and 1985, film and television was exactly that. It was film, and you would get these stupid Super 8 cameras and cut them and edit them. And I thought, that is just terrible. And my brothers were heavily involved in photography in their youth. They're older than me. So I kind of picked up taking photos just by hanging around them. So as you can see behind me, that has still carried through. First camera ever was I think it was like a Voigtlander or something. It was pretty crap anyway. My dad and I used to go to pawnbrokers, unredeemed pledges auctions when I was in about grade 11, because at that time I wanted to quit school. But he kept on at me, and we'd go to these auctions, buy things, sell them in the trading post, which is how you sold things at the time. And there we were. So after that, I sold a few other cameras and got an Olympus OM1, and that was like the holy grail of cameras. No, OM10 rather. Yeah, OM1 was pretty much the holy grail. OM10 was a little bit lesser down the scale, but it was still a very good camera with a Zuiko lens. And that was a really good camera. I think I sold it to do something else. I got into rock climbing as well, because I was very light and there was a lot of muscle and not a lot of weight on me, so I could abseil and climb really well. Because I grew up in the Scouts, and not so much being a uniformed scout, but I just went places with them because I hated wearing uniforms, and I think they cost a lot of money as well. So yeah, rock climbing was a really big part of my life, and I think I did sell that camera to get something else. And for a little while there, I was cameraless. Then when I moved to Tasmania, I got back into photography and got a Pentax, and I've always liked Nikon though. I didn't grow up in a Canon sort of environment, and looking back on it now, I wish I would have, because I think Canon are superior with video. Nikon are right up there as well with, Nikon and Olympus are right up there with photos, I think. That's just my opinion. And I found them really easy to use, but I really do believe that Canon is in the forefront of videography. If you look at a wedding photographer, most of them have a Canon rather than a Nikon. And I think it's sort of going a little bit towards Sony now as well. Never had a Sony camera. Who knows, down the track, we might get a Sony camera for this channel. So there you go. But in the background, you'll see a few cameras here. I did have a really nice Minolta about 30 years ago. And there it is up there. It's a Minolta Dynax 5XI. It was a pretty cutting edge thing at the time. You put a little chip in there and it would give you different settings. So that was kind of cool at the time. I haven't got a battery in it now, but you'd put it up to your face and your eye would be read through the viewfinder. Everything would start. So it was called iStart. So really cool camera. I've taken photos on it probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and they're still really good. So I do love film. One thing that ignited my passion back for film, I'll just put that back, was going to Japan in 2013, and that going to Japan changed my life forever, and it showed me the possibilities that the world is a really big place. And as I said, I love film cameras, I love cameras in general, but the shops that sell secondhand cameras in Tokyo are just unbelievable. So you'll see a fair few cameras behind me. I've got this Nikon F4S, got that from Japan, and it is absolutely like new. I take the batteries out of all of these when I'm not using them because I don't want them to corrode. So there's no battery in this at the minute, but it's just such good quality. Look at that, made in Japan. There you go. So what a beast. The two main SLR cameras that I have now is a full frame that I bought in 2015 to go to New York, and that's a Nikon D750, and I usually just have a 50mm lens on it. I've never really grown up with zoom lenses as such, but I just like to be the zoom lens with my feet. That's the way I was taught. And I like taking street photography in places like Tokyo, Hong Kong, and New York. And this camera is a tank. Full frame is the only way to go. My wife, I bought her a crop sensor camera. So this is a D7100. It's been really good as well. So she carried that around New York. And I think now, if we went back to these places, I probably wouldn't take these anymore. The last 3 trips that I went to Tokyo, I mainly took photos on a phone, on a really good phone, a Samsung S9 Galaxy Plus, so it was quite big. At the time it was new. So that's what I used for probably 95% of the photos, and they turned out so good. And you can just upload them instantly. And that's the whole thing about why phones have overtaken larger cameras, because they kind of do everything now. You know, the camera that I'm shooting this on now is a iPhone 12 mini, and it shoots in 4K. And we're shooting at 1080p right now, but that is just incredible. I also am a bit of a stickler for notebooks and pens. I love them. Particularly when I was in Japan, my love for really nice pens was reignited, particularly Rotring pens. They were German, and they have been purchased by Japan, the Japanese now. So really, really good pencils, because I used to draw a lot as well. So see what you're learning about me, all sorts of funny things. You probably can see up the back, there's a book there, Your Journey with Mercedes-Benz Starts Here. That's a little book that they give you when you buy a Mercedes. I bought that in 2013, and I thought, you know, you kind of made it when you buy a Mercedes. That's what I thought, but I don't think you have. Not necessarily anyway. I guess it depends what sort of Mercedes you buy. That's pretty much an entry-level one, and the next car I get probably will not be a Mercedes. Looking towards the electric cars down the track, but I might need something as a stopgap in the next year or two. So we shall see what that will be. Speaking of tech, MacBook Pro, the M1 chip model, so that's exceptional. I just can't fault it. The battery life on that is just completely insane in a good way. Even the battery life on my iPhone 12 mini is really good. It's supposed to have, you know, I've heard a lot of bad reviews about it, but it's absolutely amazing. Compared to the Samsung that I have, which is about 2.5 years old, the battery life on that is very limited now. And that's probably one of the reasons that I got this new phone as well. So I'm not much of a tech person, but when I do see something that works, I stick with it. So that's about all of the tech sort of stuff I'll talk about, but more of the mental acuity type of stuff. I remember I was saying that when I was in grade 11, I wanted to quit school, and my dad was smart enough to not argue with me about that, but he actually took me down to the unemployment office, which was about 20 or 30 minutes drive away, and in a place called Woodridge. And he said, if you choose to leave school now, there'll be a really high likelihood that you will end up in that line out the front of that unemployment office. Because at the time it was mid-80s. It was a time where interest rates were getting up there. Unemployment where we lived was really high. So he said, kick the can down the road a little bit, go to university, learn to do something, and you won't regret it. And I took that advice and I didn't regret it. I also, being fairly small and shy, I used to be a bit of a worrier about things. And I think that, that's part of life when you're young, isn't it? But my dad also gave me a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And I was trying to find it before this. I've got it, pretty sure I've got it in a box somewhere under the house. But if you want to give your kids something to read, and they're, reasonably mature, give them that book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And one of the things that was in there was, what's the worst thing that can happen? Some of the fears that we have are completely unreasonable, aren't they? I think he spoke about in the book, when he was a kid, one of his fears was that he was going to be buried alive. And when I was reading that, I was thinking, oh wow, that's probably something that I was probably worried about as well, when I was 15 or 16. But you look at the likelihood of these things happening, and they usually never, if seldom, happen. So that was a really good book. And from there, I started to read a lot of, I hate the word self-help books, but a lot of books that show you the possibilities about thinking positively and acting on that. Because you can think positive for as much as you want, but without doing anything, nothing's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons that I've started this YouTube channel as well. I've heard that it takes so long to get 1,000 subscribers on average, and it takes so long to to start making an income with YouTube, if that's the sort of thing you want to do. And it's pretty much the same as a person starting university at 53, and the degree goes for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, they're going to be 53 plus 4. They're going to be 57 years old anyway. So that's what I'm doing with YouTube. I'm doing it as a learning experience because I like to learn. I like to portray or to put out some knowledge that I've gained in my years. I'm starting to get a bit of grey hair here at the minute, and luckily I still have a little bit of hair. I'm starting to go a little bit bald on the back, but lucky to have what I've got. Like I say at the beginning, lucky to be here. All right. So I think that's about all we have for tonight, but I just wanted to catch up with you. I've done a lot more on the fence today. The 2 big vehicular posts are in. It was a lot of work, and I needed to change the location of one of the posts as well, because the exact spot where I was digging, I knew that there was a conduit under there that had our internet connection to our house. We're on the National Broadband Network, and I remember that they put it in somewhere, and it was kind of near where I wanted to dig. So that hole that I dug was really careful with sort of a really small shovel. And sure enough, the exact spot that I wanted to put it in, there was a big white conduit going through there. So I had to change plans a little bit, make the gate a little bit wider, because I didn't want to make it any smaller. just so you've got room to get out of the car and open the gate and drop people off, that sort of thing. So there'll be more of that this week, and I hope to show you where we're at. But it's getting exciting now that the posts are in the ground, or the big four anyway. There's 2 more to go for the pedestrian gate, and then I can really start hammering along. So that's all we've got. See you on the next one. Bye for now.